Stormy weather this evening, the decade of the 1930s. And I'm not just talking about the climate. The atmospheric conditions of our politics, our economics, our social well-being can only be described as, well, stormy. The Wall Street stock market crash of 1929 followed an economic recession and led the country into a full-on depression that would tragically affect lives all across the nation for the entire decade. The 1930s would bring hardships that no one could have imagined. Everywhere you go, there are layoffs, bankruptcies, and foreclosures. Millions of savings accounts are totally wiped out. Farmers and city folk alike lose everything. They are out of work and out of food. Over 2 million people, including 250,000 children, take to wandering the country, hitching rides on rail cars, going anywhere they might find work or just food. Among this population of hobos is future TV host Art Linkletter and future journalist Eric Sevareid. Other countries experience economic depression as well. In Germany, for example, there are millions of people out of work and out of food. And it is in times like this that a powerful leader is needed to make change. In this milieu of hard times, Adolf Hitler seizes an opportunity. With his charisma and his promises, he is able to gain the trust of the people and propels Nazi Germany to a world threat. Well, people were desperate, you see. Back in the United States, just when you think things couldn't possibly get any worse, a powerful punch is dealt to the country's midsection. Dust storms. Big black tornadoes ravage the Great Plains, picking up topsoil and sending it east as far as Boston, New York, and the Atlantic. These massive dust storms pick up millions of tons of topsoil, damaging over 400 million acres of farmland. Dubbed the Dust Bowl, the Central Plains from the Texas Panhandle to the North Dakota-Canadian border will experience unbelievable ecological and economic damage, lasting the entire decade and beyond. Drought, heat, crop failure, people understood those things. But never before had the land itself been so imperiled, the topsoil blowing away. Land had always been the one stable element in an environment where everything else was a gamble. Some pretty devastating events of the 1930s. But on the lighter side, the 21st Amendment is passed, abolishing the prohibition of alcohol. Penguin Books publishes the first paperback books, bringing affordable modern literature to the masses. The U.S. rowing team takes gold at the Berlin Olympics in 1936. In that same year, the beautiful new Andrea Movie Theater opens in Alexandria, Minnesota. The very first feature shown in this very theater was the Universal production, 3 Kids and a Queen. Come with us now as we journey into the 1930s through story and song. Starting us out, riding the top 10 music charts for 5 weeks in 1931. A song whose lyrics are a bit foretelling, however unintentional, reminding us that the sweet things in life are on loan. How can you lose what you've never owned? Life is just a bowl of cherries. In 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt wins the presidential election. His slogan, "Happy days are here again." This 32nd president will serve from 1933 until his death in 1945. The only president in U.S. history to be elected to a 4th term. Roosevelt faces a seemingly insurmountable challenge. By the time of his election in 1932, there are over 16 million people out of work. He implements the New Deal, which is a multitude of programs aimed at relief, reform, and recovery. The This is a sweeping social and economic experiment aimed at bringing economic stability back to the nation. There are over 20 programs in the New Deal. Among them are Social Security and unemployment insurance, the Works Progress Administration, which puts 8.5 million people to work, the Securities Exchange Commission, and the Federal Housing Administration, just to name a few. Now, FDR's New Deal programs become known as Franklin's Alphabet Agencies. Are you ready? We have the SEC, the FDIC, the SSA, the NLRA, the FLSA, the EBA, the FERA, the TVA, the WPA, the PWA, the CWA, the CCC, the AAA, the FHA. OMG. Now, many of the New Deal programs are a tremendous success. Some you might even call inspirational, and some perhaps did more harm than good. It was all a gamble, aimed at righting a country that had gone off kilter. And there was no denying that something needed to be done. Millions needed help. In the Great Plains, the Dust Bowl, the dust storms are relentless. They are the meanest, damnedest things. People can't breathe. Dust is in their throats and they cough up mud balls. They blow their noses. Black snot. Dust is in their hair and in their eyes. Dust is in their food and grit is in their teeth. Everything is covered and filled with dust. Cattle and people alike suffer from what doctors call dust pneumonia. Their lungs are simply filled with dirt. No matter how carefully one might prepare the home against an onslaught of dust, it seeps in through every crack and crevice by the bucket load. Little but Russian thistle, tumbleweed, will grow on much of this land now, and thousands decide to leave, not because they want to, but because there's nothing left. Confidence is shot, despair steps in. They cry, tears of frustration, and their tears turn to mud. Thousands suffering from the Great Depression have already moved to California, the promised land. And now thousands from the Dust Bowl decide to move there too. But they will find the situation there just as hopeless as the place they left. There are already too many migrants and not enough work or money in California. Migrants are prevented from entering the state by checkpoints along the main highways called bum blockades. You better stay right where you are if you don't have the do-re-mi. People seemed happier. Many of the New Deal programs were really making a difference in the country. There was real progress. But then in 1937, the stock market once again took a plunge. And by 1939, there were still millions out of work. The Depression is over in Germany. Hitler has put the people to work, making weapons and building highway systems. Ironically and sadly, it will be Adolf Hitler who is significant in bringing an end to our country's depression. Entering the war in 1941 puts American people to work in wartime preparedness. World War II will decisively end the Great Depression. People who have experienced the Depression are ardent savers, having had so little they learn to do with just about nothing. Even after abundance returns to their lives, they never take it for granted. They reuse the aluminum foil. They save every scrap of fabric, string, and cardboard. They refold the Christmas wrapping paper. They save every drib of this and drab of that because you just don't know when you might need it. A great deal of research went into determining the cause of the Dust Bowl. Perhaps it was an overzealous Homestead Act, providing large sections of cheap tillable land. Perhaps it was the government intervening and setting wheat prices. Perhaps it was the wheat market speculators. Perhaps it was new technology. Tractors and railroads speeded up the farming and marketing process. Well, it was all of that and more. The millions of acres of buffalo grass that had knit the earth together for centuries was plowed under to make way for wheat fields. Americans in the country's midsection had farmed too much, too fast. The land couldn't take such an assault. We had messed with nature. But something like that could never happen again. Could it? On April 14th, 1935, as one of the worst dust storms of the decade approaches, a 21-year-old itinerant folk singer thinks up a song about the world coming to an end, because that's what people thought was happening. As he watches the black Sunday duster approach, Woody Guthrie thinks of the Red Sea closing in on the Israelites. He starts humming and comes up with the first line of the song. So long, it's been good to know ya.